Hi my crafter friends, it's Jeannie Rainey here to show you a wonderful technique that I was inspired by Clare Adamson. This is a watercolor technique. Any of you can try this. So the idea is to make your own horizon. You make a sheet and then you cut it in half and then into strips, and you'll see how you can make several cards from one piece of watercolor. These are the stamps that I used. You can use any kind of foliage. The watercolor paper is Fluid 100 watercolor paper. There's 10 sheets of 5x7s. So you see I have my palettes ready. If you have re-inkers, this is very convenient just to drop a drop into the top of your stamp pad. Old Olive, this is Polished Pink, Calypso Coral, Daffodil Delight, and Mango Melody. The first couple colors, Night of Navy, Evergreen, Evening Evergreen, and Old Olive. So we needed our paint watercolor brushes and water. Now, there's a trick to this paper. There's a front side and a back side. So if you take some water and just wet the corner on both sides, you'll be able to see which side absorbs the water faster. You want to use the side that does not absorb as fast, so the water will sit on the surface. So we want to start out by saturating the paper. I'm going to start at the top. Now this technique, you go rather quickly. So once the paper is saturated, I'm just brushing the paper across, or the color across. So I'm starting at the top and the bottom first, which will be my sky and or water. So you see I'm just picking up the color and just kind of sweeping it across the paper. I'm continuing to clean off my brush in between colors. I did try to get a darker blue. Now I'm going to start the center, which will be mostly greens. So I'm starting out with Old Olive. I want a big section across the center because we're going to be cutting this paper in half. So I want the green, enough green to be on the top and the bottom. You'll see what I mean later. Then I'm adding Evening Evergreen. Now you see I'm just kind of pushing the color onto the paper and letting the water move the ink. Now sometimes if it's too wet, you gotta wait for it to dry a little bit, or just kind of wait and see how the water's gonna move the color around. So here I'm thinking I want even a darker line across the center for my actual horizon line, or my better yet, my line where my foliage or vegetation is. So I'm adding a little more Night of Navy to get a more distinctive line. Or maybe this line could show the delineation of where the water starts or the reflection. Sometimes it just takes time to let it dry to determine what other colors you need to add. So I'm adding a little more water so I can add a little more blue here. Darker blue. Okay, I think I'm happy with it here. I think sometimes you just need to stop. Stop adding and just let it be. Well, I need a little more orange or mango melody or calypso core. A little more orange in the sun coming through the clouds. You see how you can just add more and more. All right, I think I'm done. Look at all the different colors in the sky, and hasn't God just been painting wonderful sunsets for us lately? So while I'm waiting for that to dry, close up all your cases or your stamp pads. Now I've cut it in half and then in half again, and you can see how I've got 4 pictures of horizons. So we'll take the stamp pads and we're just going to use Memento Black or the stamps. Now, as I'm stamping, you can just see these pictures come to life. Don't they just look like miniature masterpieces? Each one is just uniquely different. It's so fun to try this technique. Be sure your birds are the right direction, they're not flying upside down. But look at that. See how the clouds, the sky just comes alive? Oh, I love this. Okay, then I'm going to go grab some Night of Navy for layering. And as you know, watercolor paper sometimes curls a little bit, so I'm going to put an acrylic block. My largest acrylic over the top to give it weight to flatten out the paper. And then I've got some layering. I'm going to stamp my sentiment first, thinking of you. That's something you could use for any sentiment, any occasion. So I'm stamping first, and then I'm going to texture them with texture folders. So painted tasteful textures. Be sure your ink is dry before you do multiples. So my dog just came in the room, so she distracted me a little bit. So getting the first layer adhered with liquid adhesive here. She wants me to play ball with her. Not now, Missy. Not now. Okay, there's the first layer. Then I was debating on whether to use Stampin' Dimensionals, but I think there's enough texture, and I think sometimes you can go overboard by having texture and dimension together, so I'm just kind of balancing it in the lower left corner, and I think that works great. Keep kind of popping up because the watercolor paper wants to lift a little bit. So there you have 4 beautiful, unique cards. You see how they're all completely different because of the colors that you use. So by the stamps, watercolor painters, if you don't have the re-inkers to drop into your pad, you can just squeeze them to pull up the ink and use that as your palette. Anyways, I hope this does inspire you to try. Okay, there we go. Painted texture and tasteful textile embossing folders are what I used. And look how each one is so different, even though we use the same basic stamps. But just the colors and the way that the color flows, and it just makes the sky come alive. Now again, to recap, we used a 5x7 and watercolored a horizon and cut it apart to make 4 different cards. I hope you'll try this and have as much fun as I've had with playing with this technique. Makes me feel artsy. Thanks for watching. Bye.